Mark walked up to Luna's enclosure and instantly noticed something was off. The tigress was pacing back and forth, clearly restless, her eyes locked onto him. She wouldn't let him leave, even wrapping herself around his legs as if begging him to stay. Mark's chest tightened. Something was definitely wrong. Trying not to panic, he quickly called the zoo's vet. Doctor, Sarah Bennett. She approached slowly, eyes narrowing as she observed Luna carefully. After a fast check, Doctor. Bennett suddenly turned to Mark and shouted, "We need to move, now!" Everything happened so fast, Mark barely had time to process it. He didn't know what exactly was wrong, but he could feel it was serious. Luna needed to be taken to the top animal clinic in the area, right away. Whatever was happening, it was worse than he'd imagined. But what scared Mark most was that doctor. Bennett wouldn't tell him what she'd found. It wasn't until they arrived at the vet clinic that the truth finally hit him. At last, Mark understood why Luna had acted that way, and guilt sank in deep. How hadn't he noticed it earlier? Maybe if he had, they wouldn't be in this mess now. But what was really going on with Luna? And why had she clung to him like that? Would the vets be able to help her in time? Luna was more than just any tiger at the zoo. She was one of a kind. A young female, unusually small for her age. Some experts even considered her a miniature tiger. If she stopped growing, she could become the only confirmed one in the world. But her size wasn't the only thing that made Luna special. She was also expecting cubs. After a few tries, the zoo's male tiger had successfully mated with her. Everyone knew it was risky. Pregnancy in a not fully grown female wasn't ideal. But the zoo team had experience and kept close watch. They were confident everything would go smoothly. Mark, Luna's caretaker, played a key role in that. Their bond was unbreakable. Luna didn't let anyone else near her, but with Mark, she was calm and trusting. That's why he was the first to sense something wasn't right. Luna's behavior changed overnight. Usually she slept in late and only stirred when Mark showed up with breakfast. But not today. She was already awake, pacing her enclosure over and over. And when she spotted him, her gaze didn't move. It was intense, locked in. There was something wild in her eyes that made Mark uneasy. She looked deeply unsettled, almost upset. Mark had spent years working with tigers. He'd studied them closely and knew their body language inside and out. And that look in Luna's eyes wasn't a good sign. As much as he trusted her, and even though she'd never hurt him before, he figured it was probably safer not to go into the enclosure that day. Still, he couldn't just walk away. He stayed near Luna for most of the day, watching over her and hoping her mood would settle. But nothing changed. Her expression stayed just as tense. She didn't calm down, but oddly, she also didn't want to leave his side. Even from behind the fence, she sat as close to him as she could. Maybe he was overthinking it. He hoped so. But that night, when it was finally time to go home, he found it hard to leave her behind. Something wasn't right. He could feel it, but he still had no idea what. Not from just observing her like this. He went home hoping that maybe, come morning, she'd be back to her usual self and he could go back inside the cage. But that hope didn't last long. By morning, nothing had improved. In fact, the night staff had even messaged Mark the evening before. They were concerned too. Luna's odd behavior had caught their attention, and they asked if Mark had any clue what was going on. Sadly, he didn't. But now he was more determined than ever to figure it out. Risk or not, he had to try. He hadn't told his family anything about Luna's behavior either. He didn't want to worry them, especially not with what he was about to do. His wife would probably try to talk him out of it, but Mark didn't want to be talked out of it. He needed to act. He needed to help. That morning, he walked up to Luna's enclosure with a clear goal. He was going in. She hadn't seen him yet, and he moved carefully, step by step, just hoping this wasn't going to be a massive mistake. As soon as Luna noticed him, she rushed toward him. Mark's heart pounded. He froze, closed his eyes, bracing for claws, maybe even teeth. He was ready for pain. Anything. But it never came. Instead, he felt something soft and heavy wrap around his leg. When he opened his eyes, he saw Luna had wrapped her front paws around him, hugging him. She'd never done that before. They'd always had a close bond, but this was different, a real hug from a tiger. Mark was speechless. He didn't know how to react, but when he met her eyes, he understood. She was scared. It was written all over her face. Maybe the feeling of pregnancy was strange and overwhelming to her. Maybe it was just nerves, but Mark doubted that was all it was. Animals are born with the instinct to know that pregnancy is natural and good. Luna's fear went deeper. She clearly felt something was wrong, and she was clinging to Mark because, in her mind, he was the only one who could help her. And the part that broke Mark the most was that she was only partly right. Mark knew a lot about tiger behavior, but diagnosing or treating a sick animal was way out of his league. Thankfully, he knew someone who could help. The zoo had a full-time vet, and she'd proven time and time again that she could handle just about any animal issue. Even if she wasn't sure what was wrong, she'd know who to contact or what steps to take next. Something had to be done, and fast. As soon as Mark reported that Luna might be unwell, the zoo went into immediate high alert. Luna wasn't just any animal. She was possibly the most valuable one they had. Just the thought of her being in danger sent a jolt through everyone, from the night janitor to the zoo's director. Within 15 minutes, the zoo's veterinarian, Dr. Sarah Bennett, was at Luna's cage. That alone was impressive, especially considering she hadn't even been on site when Mark called. When she arrived, Mark was still inside the enclosure. He waved her over urgently, but Sarah hesitated. She took a breath, hands shaking just a little, and moved cautiously toward the gate. Luna's eyes followed her every step. The whole place felt tense, like the air itself was holding its breath. Mark kept close to Luna, hoping his presence would calm her. But the second Sarah stepped one foot inside, Luna's body went rigid. A low, dangerous growl rumbled from her throat as she bared her teeth. It echoed through the enclosure like a warning shot. Back off. Easy, Luna. Easy, Mark said softly, trying to reach her through the fear. But Luna's instincts had taken over. She was on edge and ready to defend her space, no matter who it was. Mark slowly knelt beside her and gently reached out a hand. "It's okay, girl. She's here to help," he whispered. Each word was slow and careful, hoping their bond would carry enough weight to break through her fear. His eyes stayed on Luna's, silently begging her to trust him one more time. Sarah held back, watching everything unfold. Her heart was pounding as she tried to figure out what to do next. Then something changed. Luna's grip on Mark's leg loosened, and her body relaxed, just slightly. The tension in the air eased for a moment, like maybe, just maybe, it was safe. Sarah took a cautious step forward, but that brief calm vanished in an instant. Luna's head snapped toward her, and Mark instantly saw the danger. "Sarah, move!" he shouted. Without hesitation, Sarah spun around and bolted out of the enclosure. She stopped just outside, leaning against the nearest wall, chest rising and falling fast from the rush of adrenaline. Mark followed soon after, visibly shaken, but relieved it hadn't gone worse. "I knew she was protective," Mark muttered, catching his breath. "But that was different." Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes still locked on the enclosure. "It's a good reminder, huh? No matter how close we get, there's always a part of them we can't fully understand." Her mind drifted to the past. Luna had been rescued from poachers when she was just a cub. That trauma had shaped her, especially when it came to unfamiliar people. While she had grown to trust Mark and a small group of handlers, anyone outside that circle still triggered something deep inside her. Even Sarah, despite being her vet, was still an outsider in Luna's eyes. And that, sadly, was something they couldn't ignore. Mark understood that well. Mark slowly shifted his position, inching toward a better spot in the enclosure. With calm words and gentle gestures, he began guiding Luna toward a corner, careful not to startle her. His goal was to give Sarah a clearer view without pushing too far into Luna's space. Standing just outside the enclosure, Sarah began calling out instructions. "Check her paws, Mark." Look for any swelling. Mark followed her lead, doing his best to observe without upsetting Luna. This back and forth continued for a while, with Sarah trying to assess Luna's condition from a distance, through Mark. But it wasn't easy. Sarah's face showed it, her concern growing with every moment. Luna's nervous energy made it hard to get a good look, and every time they got close, she growled or shifted away, blocking their view. Frustration was building fast. Mark glanced at Sarah. They both knew this wasn't working. The risk was growing, and they weren't getting anywhere. "We need another plan," Mark said quietly. Sarah nodded, already thinking through other options. Meanwhile, the rest of the staff had started whispering about what was happening. News of Luna's strange behavior and her pregnancy had spread. Everyone knew how serious it was. The pressure to make the right call, to protect both Luna and her unborn cubs, was starting to weigh on everyone. Inside the zoo's medical office, a heated discussion was underway. "We could sedate her," one technician suggested. "Then we'd get a full look." But Sarah shook her head. Too risky. Not with her being pregnant. Ideas were thrown around, some useful, some not. Could they distract her with food? Use special tools? Everyone had the same goal: help Luna without putting her or the cubs in danger. After hours of going back and forth with no perfect solution, they finally settled on one. It was far from ideal, but it was the best they had. They'd use soft restraints to hold Luna just long enough to do a full check. It was the only way to get clear answers without knocking her out completely. Mark stood silently as the decision was made. His chest felt heavy. He'd spent years earning Luna's trust, and now he had to help hold her down. Even though he knew it was the right call, it still felt like a betrayal. "It's for her own good," Sarah said softly, trying to reassure him. Tension filled the air as the team gathered. Experienced keepers, handlers, and a few brave volunteers came together, each one ready for what needed to be done. They were fully prepared, with all the right tools, and a shared determination to protect Luna. Step by step they moved in. Some used ropes, others handled the equipment. Every action was careful and practiced, everyone working together like clockwork to keep things calm. It felt like it took forever, but in reality, it was only minutes. Luna was finally secured. A wave of relief washed over the group. They had managed to hold her without injury, and the moment felt like a quiet victory. With the tigress safely restrained, Sarah stepped forward confidently. She knew she had only a small window to do her job. She moved fast, checking everything: Luna's breathing, her pulse, her posture, every little sign that could point to the problem. The enclosure was quiet, except for the sounds of Sarah working. Mark stood off to the side, watching her every move, heart pounding. He just needed one answer, any clue that would explain what was wrong with Luna. Halfway through the exam, Sarah's expression shifted in an instant, from focused and professional to visibly concerned. She froze for a moment, double-checking what she had felt, her fingers resting on one specific spot on Luna's body. Mark saw her change and felt a deep knot tighten in his stomach. Something was definitely wrong. Without saying a word, Sarah gave a quick signal to the zoo staff. Within minutes, the sound of an emergency animal ambulance echoed through the grounds. The sense of urgency skyrocketed as the vehicle pulled in fast. Mark tried to approach Sarah, desperate for some kind of update, but she didn't speak. Her face was locked in serious thought, and whatever she had found clearly weighed heavily on her. Mark's anxiety spiked. The way Sarah avoided eye contact, the silence, it only made things worse. But there was no time to dwell. The process of loading Luna, still gently restrained, into the ambulance was slow and careful. Mark, unable to bear being left behind, jumped into his own car. He had to stay close. He had to know everything. The drive to the clinic was quiet, but Mark's thoughts were racing. All he could see in his mind were flashes of the past. Luna as a cub, her first steps in the zoo, the playful way she used to nuzzle against him. Their bond had grown so deep over the years, and now the thought of losing her was unbearable. Every mile felt longer than the one before. Finally, the large veterinary clinic came into view. It was known for its top-of-the-line equipment and highly skilled staff. If anywhere could help Luna, it was this place. Mark watched with aching worry as Luna was carefully unloaded and wheeled inside. He followed behind, heart heavy, clinging to hope. But as she disappeared through the doors of the operating room, he felt a deep sting of separation. He was left behind, helpless, pacing the waiting room while the team worked. Time dragged. Mark couldn't sit still. He kept watching the clock, hoping each minute would bring news. But none came. After what felt like ages, he drifted toward a glass-paneled door. Through it, he caught brief glimpses. Sarah bent over the table, under bright surgical lights. Luna's still form, machines quietly beeping. It wasn't much to go on, but it was something. Then finally, the door opened. Sarah stepped out, her face showing clear exhaustion, but also, just maybe, a flicker of hope. Mark hurried to her side, barely able to contain himself. "Sarah, please," he said, his voice tense. "Is Luna okay? What did you find?" His eyes searched hers, needing answers. Sarah gently placed a hand on his arm and led him away from the hallway. "We need to talk somewhere quiet," she said softly. They found a small, tucked-away corner of the clinic's cafeteria. 2 cups of hot coffee sat between them, almost untouched. The warmth of the drink felt strange next to the cold reality of the moment, but somehow it helped. "There were some irregularities," Sarah began, her voice cautious. "I felt some unusual bulges in Luna's uterus. It's not something I've come across in tigers before." Mark sat in stunned silence as she continued. "There's a strong chance she's developed an internal infection. It's serious and we're not taking it lightly, but we do have options." Her eyes met his with a spark of determination. "It won't be easy, but there are treatments. We're going to throw everything we've got at this," she reassured him. Mark held on to her words like a lifeline. That small bit of hope meant everything in that moment. Sarah continued gently, "Yes, the infection is severe, but here's the good news. It looks like it's localized. It hasn't spread through her body. That gives us a big advantage. If we act fast, we have a real chance to treat it." Mark took a deep breath, finally able to breathe just a little easier. The road ahead was uncertain, but now, at least, there was a way forward. Every second now felt crucial. The medical team, fully aware of the seriousness of Luna's condition, shifted into high gear. At the center of it all, Sarah took charge, organizing every step of the plan with calm precision. The goal was clear: protect Luna and her unborn cubs at all costs. Mark stood on the sidelines, caught between hope and fear. He couldn't do anything but wait, gripping tightly onto the smallest sliver of optimism. Each tick of the clock echoed the urgency of the moment. Time dragged, every minute feeling like an hour. But eventually, the operating room door opened. Sarah stepped out. She looked exhausted, shoulders low, eyes heavy. But there was something else in her face, too. A soft smile. A flicker of good news. "She's responding," Sarah said gently. "The first results look good. Luna's reacting well to the treatment." Her words were exactly what Mark had been aching to hear. A rush of relief hit him like a wave. It didn't solve everything, but it brought hope back into the room. Alone again in the quiet waiting area, Mark let the events of the day play back in his mind. He'd felt it all: fear, hope, and a love so strong it almost hurt. As night slowly faded and the first light of morning touched the sky, the clinic saw a shift too. Luna's vitals had stabilized. The signs were good. Really good. Mark walked slowly toward the veterinary team. His voice cracked a little, but he managed to speak from the heart. "I can't put this into words," he said, looking at each of them. "But thank you. Truly." In the days that followed, Luna began to bounce back. At first, she was cautious, especially around Sarah, but that started to change. Little by little, the once distant tigress began to show signs of trust. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just a softer look, a slower blink, a little less tension, but it meant everything. The zoo staff, brought together by the crisis, held serious talks about what had happened. They looked back on every detail, what worked, what didn't, and planned better systems to catch early warning signs in the future. They all agreed. No one wanted to go through something like that again. As Luna's strength returned, so did the energy of the zoo. Visitors noticed the change right away. The playful sparkle in her eyes was back. Her lively pacing, her curious glances, even her little jumps of joy, all signs that Luna was healing. But something had changed permanently, too. Her connection with Sarah had deepened. The fear that once clouded Luna's gaze was replaced with something gentler, trust. And in that, Sarah had earned a rare place in Luna's inner circle, right alongside Mark. The mood around the zoo lifted. Staff, guests, everyone. There was a shared feeling in the air. Excitement, anticipation. Luna's journey wasn't just about survival anymore. Now it was about something new. She was going to be a mother. Her story, full of challenges, close calls, and quiet victories, touched everyone who heard it. It was about dedication, teamwork, and a deep, quiet bond between a man and the animal he'd raised from birth. Mark and Luna had come through the storm together, and now they were standing on the edge of something beautiful. A fresh start, a new chapter. The worst was behind them. And the best? That was still to come. If this story moved you, please consider giving it a like, sharing it with others, and subscribing to our channel. There are so many more heartwarming animal stories like Luna's waiting to be told, and your support helps make that possible. Thank you for being here.
If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.